Hello, my name is Guadalupe Salinas, and I will be presenting on the banality of evil, violence, power, and obedience exemplified by Nazi Germany, based on writings and recordings from Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt was a German-born Jewish political theorist who dedicated much of her education and research to understand anti-Semitism. Her first published book, The Origins of Totalitarianism, was an analysis of Nazi and Stalinist regimes as the most politically totalitarian movements at the beginning of the 20th century. One of the interesting arguments in this body of work was that totalitarian governments, especially in the case of Nazi Germany, was a cause of total functionality where each movement within this party was a piece of a machine. Arendt makes a distinction between violence, power, force, and strength, and is a distinction based on the means to ends. The political actions overwhelm the end result, which is often not the basis of the action, but instead of what the action will do for the future. In the case of Nazi Germany, its means, or the organized extermination of a mass, created an end that affected what the future would consist of. Violence and politics are often interconnected, and Arendt says this cannot be ignored because politics use violence in order to gain power. However, the use of violence in politics is the last resort when power is diminishing. She says that the old verities, which are the teachings of Engels, Marx, Sartre, Clausewitz, and Hegel, and others about violence and power in politics are outdated and not applicable to her time. Arendt, being Jewish herself, speaks to experience and argues that the philosophers that were mentioned before did not have that. Her accounts on Adolf Eichmann as a man of total functionality connects this idea of experience. In the Nuremberg trials of 1945 to 49, Eichmann played the role of a human, which contrasted the idea that he attempted to put out in his defense, that he was only doing his job. This is where the danger lies within this regime and its ability to kill in the masses, because in comparison to a serial killer, which often kills due to a motive, interest, passion, etc., the orders that Eichmann obeyed, and thus those who obeyed his, allowed him to dispel not only emotion, but also empathy and ultimately thought. This made violence simple and functional. He nor anyone else in this regime stopped to reflect on the violence they were enacting. His defense was that he wasn't a murderer, he was a helpless victim of obedience and power. She explains this in an interview done in 1964 regarding Eichmann's atrocity that bureaucracy, i.e. administrative mass murderer, which like any bureaucracy naturally creates anonymity. The person is erased. She describes that the banality of evil is the stupidity to think of evil as demonic or done by bad people, but is rather the dutiful and blind obedience of orders or the loss of thought. She mentions that despite the intelligence that Eichmann and the Nazi regime had and the inventive ways they came up to kill, they possessed an unwillingness to imagine what the other is experiencing. This is what made their machine so effective. The effectiveness also lies in the obedience from those enacting violence as a means for power and those being forced into submission. Obedience, according to Arendt, is not determined by commands, but by opinion, and by the number of those who share it. This means that the superiority of power lasts only as long as there are army or police forces who are prepared to risk their lives and use their weapons. She also argues that even with the effectiveness the Nazi Party attained in organized mass killing, no government exclusively based upon the means of violence has ever existed. Even the totalitarian ruler needs a power basis, the secret police and its net of informers. Only the development of robot soldiers, which would eliminate the human factor completely and conceivably permit one man with a push button at his disposal to destroy whomever he pleases, could change this fundamental ascendancy of power over violence. The robot soldier being Eichmann and the push button master would be Hitler. So I believe that Arendt's accounts and critiques of this totalitarian regime is a great representation of what the banality of evil can manifest. Her insight on violence as a means for power and the obedience that is needed to get there provide a deep connection to her experience of what she witnessed in this period. Thank you.